Be honest with yourself for a second. How long have you been learning English? 2 years, 5, maybe even 10. You can read books and articles without much trouble. You understand most movies and TV shows. You know grammar rules that many native speakers couldn't even explain if they tried. But then someone asks you a simple question in English and suddenly your mind goes blank. If that has ever happened to you, you're not alone. I've been there too. The truth is, this doesn't mean you're bad at English. It usually means you've been practicing the wrong skill. Reading, listening, and studying grammar are valuable, but they don't automatically prepare you for real conversations. Speaking is a separate skill, and it needs its own kind of practice. Once you understand that, everything starts to make sense. You stop blaming yourself and start focusing on what actually helps. Keep reading because by the end of this, you'll understand why your brain freezes when it's time to speak. And more importantly, what you can do to finally speak English with confidence. Hey, welcome back. And if you're new here, I'm really glad you found this channel. I'm Mia, and this is TR English Speaking, where we learn the kind of English people actually use in everyday life, not the stiff textbook version. Today, we're talking about something so many of you ask me. I see it in the comments. I get messages about it all the time, and honestly, it's probably one of the most common questions I receive. Mia, I can understand English, so why can't I speak it? If you ever asked yourself that, trust me, you're not the only one. In fact, it's one of the biggest frustrations English learners face. So today, let's talk about what's really going on and why understanding English and speaking it confidently are actually two very different things. Before we go any further, I want you to notice something. The fact that you can already understand what I'm saying is actually a good sign. It means your biggest challenge isn't that you don't know enough English. The real issue is something completely different. And once you understand what that is, you'll probably stop being so hard on yourself. Things start to make a lot more sense after that. Now, if you're enjoying this kind of content and you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. Every week, I share practical lessons to help you speak English more naturally and with more confidence. I'd love to have you here. All right, let's jump in. This actually reminds me of a conversation I had with one of my students a while back. We call him David. David was great on paper. He could write really impressive essays. His grammar was solid, and if you gave him a reading exercise, he'd do just fine. But one day I asked him a very simple question. So, what did you do this weekend? And nothing. He just sat there for a few seconds trying to come up with an answer. You could almost see the wheels turning. Then it hit me. He wasn't trying to think of what he wanted to say. He was translating everything in his head. First, he thought of the sentence in his own language. Then he turned it into English, checked the grammar, changed a few words, and only then felt ready to speak. By that point, the moment was gone. The conversation had already moved on, and he was still trying to build his first sentence. Does that sound a little familiar? And that's where the real problem is. It's not your grammar. It's not that you don't know enough words. The problem is that you're trying to translate everything before you say it. Think about what happens in a real conversation. The other person finishes speaking, and you only have a second or two to respond. If your brain is busy translating every sentence first, you're always going to feel one step behind. That's why I want you to remember one simple idea. Start thinking in English. What does that actually mean? It doesn't mean you suddenly become fluent overnight. It simply means your thoughts begin to form in English instead of taking a detour through your native language first. At first, it might just be little things. Maybe you look out the window and think, it's raining. Or you open the fridge and think, I need to buy some milk. Those are small moments, but they're important. You're training your brain to connect ideas directly with English instead of translating every single thought. And the more you do that, the more natural speaking starts to feel. One day, you'll notice that the words just come out without all that translating happening in the background. Here's what that looks like in everyday life. Instead of saying something in your own language first and then converting it into English, try to let the English thought come first. For example, instead of mentally translating, I am very tired today, your brain simply goes, I am exhausted. Or instead of thinking, it was a good day, you naturally think it went really well. It might not seem like a big change, but that's exactly what makes speaking feel faster and more natural. Now, this is where a lot of learners head in the wrong direction. They think, maybe I just need to study more grammar. Or I probably need to memorize more vocabulary. Honestly, that's usually not the real problem. You could know thousands of words and understand every grammar rule in the book, but if your brain still has to translate every sentence before you speak, you're going to hesitate. It's not because you don't know enough English. It's because you're giving your brain an extra job every single time you open your mouth. So what should you do instead? Start with something incredibly simple. Forget about translating for a moment. Just look around you and describe what you see in English. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't even have to be grammatically correct. The goal isn't perfect English. The goal is to get your brain used to thinking in English. In fact, let's try it together. Take a quick look around the room you're in right now. Go ahead. Now say 3 things you can see out loud in English. Don't stop to fix your grammar. Don't search for the perfect word. Just say the first sentence that comes to mind. That's the exercise. It only takes a few seconds, but if you do it every day, you're training your brain to respond in English instead of translating first. So go ahead. Pause the video if you need to, look around, and say those 3 sentences out loud. Then come right back. Nice! Whether that felt easy, a little strange, or even a bit uncomfortable, that's exactly what I expected. Anytime you practice thinking directly in English, your brain is building a new habit. At first, it feels slow because it's unfamiliar. But every time you do it, that process gets a little quicker and a little more automatic. So don't worry if it isn't smooth yet. That's actually a sign that you're practicing the right thing. Now, there's one more piece to this puzzle. Learning to think in English makes a huge difference, but it's not the only reason people freeze when they try to speak. There's another reason, and this one has much less to do with English itself. It has to do with what's happening in your head the moment someone is listening. I can really relate to this part because I used to be afraid of making mistakes too. Not just a little nervous, I mean genuinely afraid to say something wrong. There were times when staying quiet felt easier than risking an embarrassing mistake. If you've ever felt that way, you're definitely not alone. And honestly, I think that's what holds a lot of English learners back. It's not always a lack of vocabulary or grammar. It's the fear of being judged. But here's something that completely changed the way I looked at it. People who speak English fluently make mistakes all the time. They forget words. They mix up tenses. They correct themselves in the middle of a sentence. The difference isn't that they never make mistakes. The difference is that they don't let those mistakes end the conversation. That's what real fluency looks like. It's not about speaking perfectly. It's about feeling comfortable enough to keep speaking, even when you know every sentence won't come out exactly the way you planned. I'm actually curious about something. Leave me a comment and tell me this. What's the one English mistake you're most afraid of making when you speak? I read as many comments as I can, and I have a feeling you're going to notice something interesting. So many people are worried about the exact same things. You're probably not the only one who's afraid of forgetting a word, using the wrong tense, or mispronouncing something. And once you realize that, it takes away some of the pressure. Because making mistakes isn't a sign that you're bad at English. It's simply part of learning to speak. The moment you stop chasing the perfect sentence, you give yourself permission to actually have a conversation. Instead of replaying every word in your head, you just say it. Ironically, that's when your English starts to sound more natural. Not because you've stopped making mistakes, but because you've stopped letting those mistakes stop you. If you've been feeling like you've hit a wall with your English, I want you to remember this. You're not bad at English. More often than not, you've simply been practicing the wrong things. You've been training yourself to translate instead of think in English. You've been trying to speak perfectly instead of just speaking. Once you start changing those habits, something interesting happens. All the vocabulary you've learned, all the grammar you've studied, all those hours you spent listening and reading, they finally start working together when you need them most. Before we finish, let's quickly go over the two biggest ideas from today's video. First, stop translating every thought. Start thinking in English, even if it's only a few words or a simple sentence at a time. Those small moments add up faster than you think. Second, don't let the fear of making mistakes keep you silent. Everyone makes them, even people who speak English fluently. The difference is that they don't stop talking every time they get something wrong. So here's something I'd love for you to think about. The next time you're in a conversation and your mind suddenly goes blank, pause for a second and ask yourself, am I translating? Or am I just afraid of making a mistake? That one question can tell you a lot. And once you know what's really holding you back, it's much easier to work on the right problem. Thanks for spending a few minutes with me today. If this video helped you, don't forget to like it, subscribe if you haven't already, and share it with someone who's been struggling to speak English.